What a time to be alive, hockey heads. The NHL hockey world absolutely on fire with no shortage of headlines to cover, which means the Monday edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast is coming in hot with all of the news and waiver wire breakdowns that you need. It's a big week, my friends, so let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Impacts of moves from around the league are going to have implications on your fantasy week. What's good, everybody? Welcome back inside the lab to the Monday edition of your daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey, NHL news, and betting breakdowns. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my distinguished co-host, Mr. Steele Roden. On this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Shout out to the everydayers. Much love, salute, and thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Even right now through crunch time, baby. Things in the NHL are extra spicy. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, where new customers bet $5 and get 200 in bonus bets back in the account. Download the app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Steele, I'm fired up for this one. I have far too many targets. I got honorable mentions at the wazoo. There's a lot going on in the NHL. Straight up and down, there is a lot to cover. And your ability as a fantasy GM right now to maneuver that and harness some really good situations, I'm intrigued left and right. You and I haven't spoken about a lot, and we'll break down the news and in more depth, every single move, Granlund and otherwise. There's a lot to get to, of course, but we're going to stick to waiver wire on today's episode. There's some situations here that I think you and I need to discuss. So I've got a whole bunch of targets. I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to you. We got big time bets at the end of the episode tomorrow. You and I will break down the trades that we've seen, the moves that have happened in a little bit more detail, but we'll stick to waiver. Who are you looking at for this week? Because we got the Four Nations looming. So this is a tricky part of the schedule here to maneuver.
Yeah, an absolutely crazy weekend with all the trades that happened in Vancouver, making 2 trades in less than 3 hours. I have a feeling you'll talk about a couple of the trade players that were traded this weekend on today's episode of the Waiver Wire Targets. I've got a lot of honorable mentions, so let's get right into it with my first 3 players, and I'll get real quick about them as well. I've mentioned them in the past. First off, Adam Fantilli, 34%. Rostered right now on Yahoo. He's got 3 games this week. He's got 7 points in his last 5 games. He has really stepped up since that terrible news of Sean Monahan missing an extra 4 to 6 weeks with that wrist injury. Second on my list for honorable mentions, I mentioned him last week, and he has taken off and exploded this past 7 days. Marco Casper of the Detroit Red Wings. He's already up 20% in the last week, 18% in the last week. He's got 2 games on the schedule. That's why he's an honorable mention. These 3 guys are honorable mentions because of some tough schedules or lack of games in the next couple of days. Finally, Simon Holmstrom of the New York Islanders, rostered at 3% on Yahoo right now. 3 games this upcoming week. He's got 6 points in the last 3 games. The New York Islanders, probably the hottest team in the National Hockey League right now. 6-game win streak. This Eastern Conference race is absolutely legit right now. It's going to come down to the wire. All 3 of my players come from the Eastern Conference, and all 3 teams are absolutely firing on all cylinders. So honorable mentions for those 3 guys, but I got some more players that I'm going to get into in depth on.
I absolutely love that you have honorable mentions. Like, I had to try and get the blinders on. This is a really exciting few days of NHL action here, right? We have all of the impact of these moves. And like I tried to allude to off the top, that's creating some situations. So we talked about some of these players on my honorable mentions as well. And for a number of factors, including schedule, but also ownership, they just deserve some love. And some of these guys, Steele, are ones that you've heard from me at a ton. So that's why they're getting honorable mention. Cole Perfetti, Jackson Lacombe, both red hot, Both teams have somewhat unfavorable schedules, so I just wanted to throw those on the radar. If there's guys or gals out there looking for just a quick fill-in, love Jackson Lacombe and Cole Perfetti. Tony D'Angelo continuing to eat minutes and contribute. We spoke about all three of these players recently, Steele. And Joey Decord looking really good in the cage, but it's the ownership. 82 on Fantrax, but 55 on ESPN, 75 on Yahoo. If Joey Decord's out there, I highly recommend it. Red Wings, Leafs, Flames. So those are my honorable mentions. And let me just get to this quick. I'm intrigued about what's going on here with this Calgary Flames situation, Steele.
Yeah.
A team that with Dustin Wolf in the mix, I have somewhat confidence in now to maybe be a wild card team and make some noise, be a very pesky team to play against in the first round, and that's going to create some fantasy value. So Joel Farabee on the top line with Knies, on the top line with Huberdeau. I'm intrigued. I want to look. Leafs, Avs, Kraken this week for Calgary. Joel Farabee out there in leagues. And why not Morgan Frost as well? A fresh start on a team that's played some pretty good hockey. Morgan Frost is taking the number one power play unit right now, Steele. So both those guys with the Kraken, Leafs, and Avs this week, kind of like taking a little shot on the Calgary Flames until we really see what happens. You can drag and drop, but I want a piece of Frost and Farabee with a fresh start on a team that's played some pretty good hockey.
Yeah, I think this is an absolute gamble play from general manager Conroy with the Calgary Flames. I actually think it's a really good trade for their team. They're taking a bet on a guy who has scored 50 points in the past in Joel Farabee, and who's been a perennial 35 to 45 plus point player who impacts the game physically. And then also you're taking a chance on Morgan Frost, who has a lot of potential right now to be a number one centerman, number two centerman in the top six. And just like you said, change of scenery can always help these guys develop and get out of the funk that he has been in. And Morgan Frost has been up and down, in the light of John Tortorella, in the light of this.
Is it going to work out? It could blow up, but it could work out nicely. I think it's a low risk, high reward situation, but we can talk
work out
tomorrow.
Yeah, could work out. And I think fantasy value wise, it's great to mention them right now.
Yeah, streamers.
Yeah, exactly. Streamers for the Calgary Flames. So, keep an eye on them for sure.
Boom. Who else you looking at? I got another couple of pair teammates coming up that I got to talk about. I got a D-man. I've got a bunch of bets for tonight as well. Who else are you looking at, though? Because this is also a bit of a dodgy week. I believe 4 teams have 3 games. Columbus is one of them. I believe that there's another couple. I'll bring it up in a second. But who are you looking at next?
There's 4 teams that have 4 games this upcoming week. It's the Montreal Canadiens, Ottawa Senators, Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Utah Hockey Club. And that's exactly where I'm going with these next 4 players. 3 of them actually come from the same team, because alongside the New York Islanders, they are one of the hottest teams in the National Hockey League in the Eastern Conference right now. I'd like to talk about them all once we come after the break, but I got one defenseman from the Western Conference who's really impacted the game in his last 9.
Let's hear about it. I'm excited, Steele. I'm very intrigued. Who are you looking at here?
Well, I'm looking at the Ottawa Senators is the big group I'm looking at. You talked about Shane Pinto last week. I have Josh Norris, Shane Pinto, and Ridley Gregg on my list for waiver wire targets. Like I said, 4 games on the schedule. They're playing some really great hockey right now, 4 or 5 game win streak, top 3 in the Atlantic Division. And I'll break it down why I'm looking at these 3 guys. It's a very tough schedule for the Senators coming up on this 4-game road trip, but I'll break it down after the break.
I like that you want to push to break, because I got a whole bunch of other players to talk about, Steele, and I'm ready to get to these bets. Let's have a big week. Like I said, couple of very tricky situations on the horizon here with this 4 Nations Cup in the middle. This week's going to be a bit dicey. The return to play could also potentially be a bit dicey, Steele, after the break for these players, and then they have to deal with the trade window. So this is why you really have to make sure you know what's going on. These line shuffles, there's a lot to handle. Keep your finger on the pulse Monday through Friday. We got you covered. We'll get to the rest of our targets after the break. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Super Bowl 59 this Sunday. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. Go Birds. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first tutty, calling the MVP, or even betting on that coin flip, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Live betting keeps you involved from start to finish. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com today to get started. Bet $5 and win you get 200 back in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button. Leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support you show us on YouTube, everywhere you find the podcast. We really cannot be doing this without all of you out there. So thank you so much for all that love and support.
It's a fact.
As much as it pains me to do so, I got to show some love to the Ottawa Senators fantasy-wise.
I agree.
Look, you talked about Shane Pinto last week. You've talked about him a couple of times over the span of the last, few months. Shane Pinto, Josh Norris, and Ridley Gregg, very relevant right now in fantasy hockey leagues. Norris at 33%, Pinto at 11%, and Gregg at 2%. So all guys below 35% on Yahoo. Very widely available across fantasy hockey platforms right now. Josh Norris has played really good the last couple of games. He did go down with an injury and didn't return in that 6-0 win against the Minnesota Wild. But Josh Norris, 4 points in his last 2 games. Shane Pinto's got 6 points in his last 2, I believe. So he's been very productive in the offensive zone. That third line of Shane Pinto and Ridley Gregg has been really good. 5 points in his last 5 games for Shane Pinto. Ridley Gregg, a couple blocks, hits, padding those peripherals as well. So very tough schedule for this Ottawa Senators team the next week. They take on the Nashville Predators, the sole game for Monday night. Finish Tuesday, go up against the Tampa Bay Lightning, actually play the Tampa Bay Lightning again on Thursday, and then finally finish off the week against the Florida Panthers. So upcoming 4-game road trip for the Sens. They've been really great so far. This is the tightest the Atlantic Division has been in a very long time, the most dangerous and toughest division in hockey right now. And the Ottawa Senators are finding ways to win games.
2 things here. When I look at I was just talking about the Calgary Flames, and when I look at fantasy value and real life hockey standings value, I'm much more concerned about the Calgary Flames and what they're going to be able to do in that Western Conference, just in terms of their overall play overall this season. Whereas the Ottawa Senators right now, Steele, bringing up the teams that they've been beating, just actually even look at their losses, because sometimes I think losses are very indicative of how good a team is playing. They lose 1-0 to Washington, 2-0 to Boston, a team that's playing pretty well, and then a revenge game against the Rangers. Otherwise, they've beat the Red Hot Islanders, the New Jersey Devils, the Leafs, Washington, Minnesota 6-0. These are some very impressive wins is what I'm trying to get at. So I believe you were actually cautioning someone against, they asked about dropping Drake Batherson a week ago, and I believe you told them to hold on, and there you go. Look at what happens. That's far too good of a player, far too good of a power play, and you and I have been far too long backing this Ottawa Senators team as one that should be making some noise. Lots of fantasy value to be had here. I want a piece of that Ottawa Senators team. Thank you very much. You're going to have to be very close to the schedule and the ease of schedule as well as a fantasy GM right now. Equally as critical as knowing these players. Let's go. Matt Knies, Flames, Kraken, and Canucks this week for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I know a lot of people out there are going to go flip. It's impossible to get Matt Knies. He's 74% on Fantrax. That's fair. He's 42 on Yahoo. That's a mistake. 42 on ESPN. He's looking comfortable once again since his return. He's playing right now with Mitchie and Austin Matthews, and I think that's all you need to hear. The Toronto Maple Leafs looked really good on Saturday night, and I want a piece of them, especially going into the week that they have with the Flames, Kraken, and Canucks. I think that's a really good week for Toronto, even though that's a 3-game Western road swing. Hit me with Matt Knies this week. I believe that's a must-add. That must be my favorite one for this week, Steele. I don't know why he's still out there. Matthews, Marner, Knies, say no more.
Yeah, it's a little surprising, the fact that if he's still available in a lot of leagues out there, you got to jump on him. Big schedule for the Maple Leafs coming up. And like you said, playing on a line with Matthews and Marner, or whether it's Nylander and Tavares, the production is going to come, and he has made himself known as a net front presence in the National Hockey League. That's where he gets most of his goals. So you got to highlight a guy who plays on a line with those caliber of players.
6 points in 4 games as well.
6 points in 4 games for Matthew Knies from coming back from injury as well. That's quite impressive for the Buds right there. My final player for this upcoming week, John Marino of the Utah Hockey Club, soon to be Utah Mammoth. That is the name we're going with from now on,
Okay.
Flip. It's
I
the
like it.
Utah Mammoth.
I'm
The
fine with it.
designs, yeah, it's looking
They're
slick
pretty
out there.
fire, actually,
They're
those.
pretty fire jerseys. I like them
Yeah.
a lot. But John Marino, he's back in action. He's played 9 games. He's got 5 points in his last 9 games. Coming back from from injury, back surgery he had, back injury he had. So he's coming back into action. He's on that top D pairing with Mikhail Sergachev right now. Like I said, 5 points in 9 games. He's got 4 straight assist nights in his last 4 games. He's adding a couple of peripherals here and there, 11 shots, 10 blocks, 3 hits. I just really like what he's been doing. I've also mentioned Michael Kesselring in the past. I like what they've done. I really like this Utah, this Utah defense is really shaping up to be right now. I still think they can add a few more pieces in the forward group, obviously on the blue line, depending on where they're at the trade deadline. But I'm really liking the way this team is shaping out to be right now.
51 points within striking distance, not completely out of the question by any means necessary that they may go on a little heater here and maybe slide right into a contention for a wild card spot, something that I think they probably are right now. So very intriguing young team in Utah. So much of a situation where I look at it as a confidence thing. One week they're lighting it up, the next week they're getting lit up. So right now I like that you're digging into the trenches a little bit. I got a whole bunch of other players to mention. So I'll get to one, I'll get to the break, and then I'll mention my final 2, which are on the same team once again. Esa Lindell is one of those players that is not a sexy fantasy piece. He doesn't jump off the page exactly with offensive value. But right now, with points in 3 straight games and Miro Heiskanen out and a hole of minutes to be filled, I know Cody Cece's coming in there, but no offense to Cody Cece. And, Thomas Harley owners, I think, even benefit from this even more with more minutes being thrown at him. But Steele, taking Esa Lindell over his last 3, just his last game, assist, +3, 6 block shots, 26 plus minutes, ice time already on the rise in a big way. Dallas this week, also Steele, probably one of my favorite reasons to snag a security blanket on the blue line is how I'm pitching this for this week. If you need a blue liner with Esa Lindell, Sharks, Kings, Ducks this week for a Dallas team that just added a really good piece in Granlund. I think this is a big week for Dallas. And with the minutes to be had with Heiskanen, I'm going to take a little gamble on Esa Lindell and hope that the offense also keeps coming. But if my guy's putting up +3 and 6 block shots a night, I'm okay with that too, especially if he's eating 26 minutes of ice time per night.
Yeah, he's going to be getting a lot of opportunity right now. Again, Cody Cece is not the one you're going to be leaning towards in a situation
on a good
like
team,
this.
So.
Yeah, a lot of good teams. The offense has been really good as well. Rupe Hintz, Jason Robertson getting back into form from a couple of years ago of why we've touted them so highly and put them sort of on a pedestal the last couple of seasons. We're going to come back after the break. Big time bets. Only 1 game on the schedule. And of course, Flip will wrap up his last couple of waiver wire targets, the must adds for this upcoming week. All of that and more coming up next. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Once again, continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. You can find our show every Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning. Could not be doing this without all of you out there tuning in to our shows on a weekly basis. So thank you so much for that. Flip, big time bets, 1 game on the schedule. We'll get to that very, very shortly. But first, your last 2 must adds for this upcoming week.
I know it's really easy to probably say this now after we've seen the Washington Capitals go on a prolonged run of success that's seen them now sit clear atop the NHL standings with 75 points and really flex their muscle as a team that can get it done in all facets of the game, special teams, offense, defense, 5-on-5, middle zone play, anything, neutral zone play, sorry. I said, I think to you very early on that we might need to start considering this team a serious cup threat and how good that would be for the game of hockey. Steele, how much amazing storylines are going on right now in the NHL? Trades, Sidney Crosby on a heater, Ovi closing in on Gretzky, a lot of really tight races, teams coming out. But even in the bottom of the barrel, teams like the Buffalo Sabres starting to play really good hockey. There is lots going on, but let me hone it back in here to the Washington Capitals because they are for real. players like Pierre-Luke Dubois, these are also storylines that are amazing. And to me, that second line with Protas, Dubois, and McMichael is one of the big reasons why this team has been so effective. They've been able to give that top line of Strome, Ovi, and I think Wilson's been rotating in and out there quite a bit. But anyway, their ability to get it done. So when I look at the Washington Capitals this week, Flyers, Utah, Panthers, kind of a mixed bag. And I look at that second line, Pierre-Luc Dubois and Alexi Protas putting up numbers right now. Protas is having a really good season, Steele.
Yeah, he
For
is.
a guy who hasn't made much noise in the NHL before, last season, 6 goals in 78 games. He's got 43 points in 52 games, 172 shots on net. You don't get him for the peripherals, but let me just finish with this. While the Washington Capitals, that was a really good game, by the way, Winnipeg and Washington. Speaking of storylines, 5-4, two best teams in the league. Absolutely love it. 59% on Fantrax for Protas, 39 on Yahoo, 31 on ESPN. He's out there. Pierre-Luc Dubois, similar numbers, 64 Fantrax, 45 Yahoo, and 33 ESPN. I want a piece of the Washington Capitals, just like we mentioned some of these other teams. I really think Protas and Dubois right now, it's an add and hold situation. This Washington Capitals team isn't going anywhere, Steele.
Look, we talked about all the additions they made this offseason. They've already locked up Logan Thompson to his, 5-6 year deal.
Something like that.
They're looking at, extending Jacob Chikrin as well. They've already got Pierre-Luc Dubois locked up. It's been nothing but a win-win situation for both the LA Kings and the Washington Capitals after this trade. The trade that they made. So it's a win-win for both these squads. Washington at the top right now in the Eastern Conference. Big time bets. Do you have any other final players for this upcoming week, or should we get to big time bets?
We can finally get to big time bets. My bad, pal. I know you've been pushing me on a little bit today. I had a lot of players that I wanted to look at. They were just like, I also fell into the category of I kept looking at guys that jumped off the page, and
there's a lot of really good players right now who are
a lot of
really
the same guys that you and I
trade.
have spoken about at length as well. So anyway, back to you, my friend. Sorry about that. Giddy up, big time bets. I'll turn it over to the master, by the way.
No apology necessary. That's what we do. We try to help out all of our listeners for their weekly matchups. Week 18 coming up this in the next 7 on Monday. One game on the schedule. Ottawa Senators starting off their road trip in Nashville. Solo game of the night. We've got a same game parlay on our hands. This might be a potential area where you just sit back and enjoy the hockey for once, maybe not gamble. However, we're still going to provide our top favorite picks for the same game parlay. Over to you, my friend. Where you're looking at first.
So my first instinct here was the under, looking at Ottawa and Nashville. And let me just explain why. Nashville kind of got a little bit of a come-up-in situation over the last few games after looking really, really good. They got slapped by Anaheim 5-2. Lose a tough one to Vancouver 3-1, and then another tough one 4-3 to Buffalo. And then Sidney Crosby comes in there. Hey, by the way, how's Sid looking over the last few games? Thank you very much. 3-0 Steele at the hands of the Pittsburgh Penguins. These are really embarrassing losses. I think you're going to see a very desperate and hungry Nashville Predators team. So I think that's going to lead to the under. Levi Merrillainen also playing very good hockey. Looks like Linus Ullmark is traveling with the team, but still a couple days away. So there's another little tidbit if you're looking for a goalie, perhaps. However, let me spit it out. I'm going under 6.5. I'll take it to 6.5. I'm going with the Sens still, Steele. I like the mojo flowing for the Ottawa Senators. I'll take the plus odds as well. Ottawa on the money line, along with the under and my lock of the night, Brady Tkachuk, the talisman, the leader, 1 goal, 1 assist for the Ottawa Senators in his last time out, 9 shots on goal, being a bit of a menace as well, like he likes to do. Because it's a same game parlay, I'll cop out on a low odd. Tkachuk, anytime point. I believe he'll get his. I believe this does stay under the number, and I believe I'll ride with the plus odds with Ottawa on the road here for a team in Nashville that I know they said they'll be desperate. I'll just give the coin slight edge to the Ottawa Senators.
Somewhat of a side bet here.
Okay.
I actually have the over 5.5. So there is some opportunity for both of us to hit at the same time.
4-2 final.
4-2 final. I'm with you, though. Ottawa Senators on the money line. I have them as well. They've just been red hot. 4-game winning streak, 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. It has been 50-50 between these two teams when they do match up together. However, the Ottawa Senators are they're firing right now, and they're playing some really good hockey.
Yes, they are.
I'm going with them on the money line. I'm going to tease it down, take the over 5.5 in this matchup. Favorite pick. It hit for me over the weekend. The parlay didn't hit, but this bet hit anyways. Tim Stützle, 2+ points.
He's looked good.
Game against the Minnesota Wild in that 6-0 win. It's plus 104 right now for Ottawa Senators on the money line, minus 112 for the over 5.5. The odds aren't out for Stützle or the Brady Tkachuk because the player props odds just aren't out yet as we're recording. But that is my same game parlay. Tim Stützle, 2+ points, Senators money line, and the over 5.5. So there's some opportunity for both of us to hit.
Timmy Stutz has looked so confident with the puck.
Yeah.
This is a situation for me, Steele, with the Ottawa Senators that I look at it like this. They have to play an offensively potent game that they very much can do. They need to be that deadly team on the power play and just rack up goals for them to really have success. And I know every team wants to be good defensively and they have to improve, I'm sure. But to me, way this team is built right now, kind of top heavy, if you will. And I know Linus Ullmark is there, but he has not been someone they've been able to rely on this season because of his injuries. To me, they have to be carried by the offensive potency that you can see when Stützle, Tkachuk, Drake Batherson, even Claude Giroux, Jake Sanderson with a 4-piece. That's when, to me, this team is going to be hard to handle. Without that going, they're too much of a liability on the back end to make real noise. So for me, the only way that this goes in the direction that they need it to go in terms of playoff success is that offense and that power play. They have to be beast.
Yes, they really do have to, and that's what they've done over the last couple of games. That penalty kill has been phenomenal for them. That Washington Capitals game, they scored 2 shorties. They had a couple of penalty shots.
Good point.
Ottawa Senators have been playing really good hockey. Solo game for Monday night. Those are the big-time bets. That is the same game parlay, Ottawa Senators, Nashville Predators. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. For your second listen, make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your weekly matchups, your bets tonight, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow to break down all of those trades over the weekend.
Peace.